Man, it just seems like the perfect day so far. If you've been outside, and you had to go outside unless you slept here last night, you came in and you felt good outside. I think somebody told me, Alec, did you tell me yesterday that today is the first day of autumn? Is that right? Is today the first day of fall, autumn, fall? Man, it's nice. It's beautiful outside, and we're in here today, and we're worshiping together. It's a good day. And I hope that you take advantage of the day that God's given you today, that it is His day, and do something for Him. There's a lot of things always going on. We encourage you to stay for our class after services. We'll go to our classrooms, and we've got some important things, I'm sure, that's going on in all those classrooms. And then this afternoon at 2 o'clock, we are hosting the services. Now, I know it's different from our calendar, but we had to swap some things up from the calendar. We're hosting the services today at El Reposo nursing home, and that is where Margina is, and I know she would love to see many of you if you have the time to come out. And Les has said that he would drive the bus if you would like to go, but you need to let him know. You need to let him know today, and I'm sure that bus would leave around 1:30. I didn't ask Les about that, but I'm sure it would leave about 1:30 if you'd be willing to ride the bus to go to the services there. Just a brief service. We won't be out there long, but to give us the time to visit with her. She's still having the effects of that broken arm. And I know she would love to see everybody if you have the opportunity to come. And then tonight, after our services tonight, we're going to taco about Lads to Leaders. And I think we're going to have chili. Man, I thought that was funny. I thought y'all'd laugh at that. No, we are going to have tacos. And I like to say that every time we get the opportunity. Taco about Lads to Leaders. It's never too early to get your kids involved in Lads. And it's never too late for you to get involved. There's all kinds of things for adults that some of us do. I know a couple of the members here have done the Centurion of Scripture, and look forward to meeting tonight, going through that program, signing up. Our kids are looking forward to that. So if you can, stay for a few minutes after tonight. We'll have some tacos and some Mexican food, and we'll look at doing what we can do for Lads to Leaders. I want to read real quick as we get ready to begin our lesson in Matthew chapter 28. You can follow along if you like in the last part of the chapter. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. When they saw Him there, they worshipped Him, but some doubted. Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you, and behold, I am with you always, even to the ends of the age." When we look at that story, what Jesus tells us, that our purpose is to reach out to others. That it's not just to be content with what we have here, but it's to reach out to those that don't have Christ, baptizing them, yes, teaching them the gospel and showing them the truth and how to obey that gospel, to become a child of God, to become part of the adopted family there, and receive that inheritance of Christ and the Father, yes, but teaching them to observe all things I have commanded you. All the things that Jesus taught us about worship, about prayer, about giving, about our stewardship that we've looked at the last several weeks. All these things that God wants us to teach others about, to bring them into the fold. Now, I want to share with you something that many of you have heard of Rick Warren. Rick Warren he's an author. He's of a church, a denominational church out west, and he has a large number of people that come to the services there, and he has a following of a lot of people that like to read his books. And I'm one of those guys. I like his writings. I like to read his book, Purpose Driven Life. Many of you have had that book. I have given many of you that book, a copy of that book, because I think it's very important. I think when you read it, he has a unique way of saying that we have a purpose here, that God put each and every one of us here for a reason. So he has a lot of good things to say. Now, I don't agree with everything he says theologically. Absolutely not. I don't agree with a lot of what he says about worship and about salvation and about those things. But his book has touched a lot of people because he can say things in a way that we can understand them. And there's nothing wrong with using that. But before he wrote that book, Purpose-Driven Life, I believe that's 2004, he wrote in 1997 a book called Purpose-Driven Church. And if you were in ministry at all, you heard about this book and then later followed Purpose-Driven Youth Ministry. And that's the one that I remember reading so much of. But that Purpose-Driven Church talked about churches that were growing, that those churches that were growing had purpose. And that purpose was set forth so everyone knew what the purpose was. Everybody knew the idea of why you were here this morning and what was the point of you being here and what specific general, that really doesn't make any sense, does it? What specific purpose you had to fit the general theme. In his book, he has 5 levels of commitment. I want to share these with you because our lesson this morning is on Christian hospitality. If you got that in the bulletin, you can say that. Christian hospitality. And I'm going to bring that to Christian hospitality in a minute. But I want you to see this. He says that there are 5 levels of commitment in every church. And I believe that's the case here too, that we have 5 different levels. At the first, and I worked real hard to make this look pretty, so please just bear with me if it doesn't. First, he says there's the community. The community that we have. And that community, that's the largest pool that we draw from. That's people that are lost, people that are within driving distance of the church. It's the largest circle because it represents the largest number of people. In other words, another word we might refer to these people as these are the unchurched. These are the people that live in the homes right here and here and here and back in the neighborhood back here that could walk here very easily and come to worship, but they choose to go somewhere else if that is that's fine if they do. But some of them choose not to go anywhere, and that is a community that we can draw from. The next group that you have is the crowd. And the crowd represents everybody that shows up for at least one service on Sunday. Now, many of you are in that realm. Maybe you're not in the community, but maybe you're in the crowd here. That classifies a lot of people here today because you make a commitment that you're going to be here at least one service per week. Now, I'll be first to say, that's not much of a commitment, but it's a start. It's a building block that we can use to build from. So there are those here that are the crowd. Those are the first 2. The third one, he says, that is the congregation. That's the baptized believers. These are more than just the committed members. These are those that are committed to the purpose of fellowship. These are the ones that we say, if you move congregation, you move your letter. That, how we say that, even though I've been in church, I don't really know what that means. But when we look at that's the people that are coming here, that are the believers, that are the members, that are somewhat active, but not as committed as the other groups. The fourth is the committed. Now here's where we're getting a little more to some of us. These are the people that are serious about their faith. They pray, they give, and they're committed to the process of discipleship. He also calls these the maturing members. These are people that are good and involved to an extent, but they're not really involved in a specific ministry. Now, this to me makes up the majority part of the local congregation. Because most of you are here on a regular basis. You come 2, 3, we have good numbers on Wednesday nights. You come to those Wednesday night devotionals and you give of your means and you come and you help out with some things. But there's still a deeper level of commitment that only a select few have. And that few, that as you would see there, would be the core. And that core, this is the smallest group because this represents the deepest level of commitment. These are those that are committed to ministering to others. They're the ones that are leading. They're the ones that are involved in the various ministries. And this is the heart. Being at the center, it's the heart of the church. And without this, your congregation would be at a standstill. Without that core group, the congregation would be stagnant. They wouldn't be growing at all. You would show up, and I know that Jimmy and Vance have a hard time with our men sometimes of getting here early to make sure we have people to do the things of stand up here to serve the Lord's Supper or the prayers and make sure everybody's on task, that we have the right number of people and rotate that number of men out so the same people don't use it every time. There are some congregations where I've been a part of where they've asked me to come and preach, and I would preach and I would lead singing and I'd wait on the Lord's table and I'd say the closing prayer. You know, those are congregations that really aren't going because they don't really have a core of committed members. They have members that show up. They may have members that write a check. But that core of commitment is really not there. Now, this is not the lesson, but it's a lesson in itself. If you look at this and you kind of examine this circle of levels, you try to figure out where you are in that group. Where you fit at. And now the purpose of looking at this and the purpose of examining these different levels of commitment is basically what I just read in Matthew chapter 28. Is to go and make disciples, to baptize them and to teach them, because our point is to bring every group into the core. It's to bring everybody into that group in front of the other. But let me tell you this. It also means that the outside groups continue to grow too. You see that because if we bring everybody to the core and everybody's here in the core, if all, 210, 215 members we have here this morning, if we're all in that core, what are we going to be doing? If we're baptized believers, if we're serving God correctly, if we're making disciples, what are we doing? Making disciples. That means we're reaching out to the lost, which means if we're reaching out to the lost, the crowd of committed is going to get bigger. The congregation will get bigger. The crowd will get bigger. The only group that will not get bigger unless we have businesses come into our area, which has not been likely lately, is the community. The others can continue to grow. That's our purpose here. That's what we do here, is to push everybody in to another level, to continue to bring those others in. I used to criticize a mentor of mine, Steve Shelton, who had, when we'd have our meetings at Atlas when I was working there as just a kid, and he said, I wish 50% of our congregation was unchurched. And what? Why would you want 50% of your congregation unchurched? I never understood that until later on in life. When that meant if there's 50% of our congregation unchurched at all times, it means there's always work for us to do. Does that make sense? It means we're constantly bringing lost souls in to teach them the gospel. And we're constantly moving this group into this here, this group into here, this group into here, and continually moving in that process of bringing more people to Jesus. We need some unchurched members in here. Now, let me say, if there's not any unchurched members in here this morning, we're not doing our job. Does that make sense? We're not doing what we're supposed to be doing if we don't have anybody here that's not members of the body of Christ. Now, our goal is to bring them to that, yes. But we've got to reach out and continue to bring them in. Now, what in the world does that have to do with Christian hospitality? I think everything revolves around Christian hospitality. Now, when you think of hospitality, we're going to get into some scriptures in just a second. When you think of hospitality, visions of warm meals and finely decorated tables, elegant centerpiece, and a home that's decorated to the hilt with a little touch of Martha Stewart in every room. That's typically what we think about when we think of hospitality. But when we go back to our previous slide, when you go back and look at how that is supposed to bring more people in, research shows, Flavel Yakeley did church attendance and church growth seminars over the years and did several studies on this, and he found that at least a third to a half of each congregation of Protestant churches do not have a feeling of belonging in their local congregation. Let me say that again. Let's use Woodlawn. If he's right, there is a third to a half of the people here this morning that are here, but they don't feel like they belong here. That's awful, isn't it? Why would somebody not feel like they belong? See, the most valuable earthly asset that God has given to us is a person in our life that is warm, that is supportive, those people in our life that we establish those friendships with. And those friendships that we have that are established within our church community, what better place is there to find friendships that if we have that warmth, encouragement, and supportive friendship here at church, we feel like people miss us when we're not there, and we feel like people care about our well-being while we're here or not. And if a third to the half of our members don't feel like they belong, then somebody is getting left out. Now, I would suggest there has never been an intent of leaving somebody out. At least not here. I don't think that's the intent of anybody here, of to leave someone out and to make someone feel left out. To make someone feel like they come in and they leave. He did an amazing study that said he went through churches and he said there were over 80% of the churches or so he went to, he went in and he went out without a single person speaking to him. Now that's scary when we think of if we are to go make disciples, if we are to constantly bring people into each center. And if we're not doing that, then we're not fulfilling our purpose of the church. Those images that we have of hospitality, they don't fit because the most hospitable person that I believe has ever walked the planet was Jesus. And He didn't have a centerpiece on His table. In fact, He didn't have a table. In fact, He didn't have a home to put a table in. He didn't have an oven to cook food. He didn't have a nice couch that you could sit on. He didn't have different family photos that would break the monotony of silence to talk about and look at and things. And where did you get this? Oh, this is nice. This is pretty. He didn't have anything like that, and yet we consider Him to be the most hospitable person on the planet. How can we say that about Him? Well, what was more important to Jesus? The table that He ate at or the people that He ate with? What was more important, the menu of what was served or the people that He spent time with there? The cleanliness of the home? Or was it more important of just being together? See, we need to change that word hospitality. We need to change the way we view that word. Because we think of this, of allowing people to come into our house, and we have a nice house and it's fixed up enough that we can entertain a lot of people and have a good time and fix a good meal. That's what we think of hospitality. And although that's an aspect of it, it's not the key aspect. And I think as looking at this, as we change the definition of this word and look at what it means, we'll change the mindset of our entire congregation and we'll begin to do things a little differently. And I hope that's the case. And I hope you're listening carefully, and I hope you take this to heart, and I hope you see this is out of love, and I hope you try to put these things into practice from the Scriptures. But when you look at the word hospitality, the power of hospitality lies in that belonging aspect, okay? That's not the answer for your blank in the bulletin, but the power of hospitality revolves around not having anyone feel left out. The power lies in inclusion. Inclusion. Now, teachers understand that word. Because when you look at that word as a teacher, you see, you don't want to have people left out. You want to make sure they're included with everybody in their group. You don't have people that are totally separated from their classmates all alone because they cannot keep up. If they have learning disabilities, they're not totally separated from their entire class. Your job is to include them into some of the different aspects. You have to change your discipline plan for some of them. You may have to change your lesson plans for some of them. You may have to do a different test for some of them. But the point is that you don't want those kids to grow up in a lifestyle where they feel left out, secluded, not part of the group. Hospitality revolves around us as a congregation making sure we reach out to those people, we latch on to them, and we pull them in to the group. That we make sure we work towards inclusion. Now, it's a biblical word, hospitality. It's demanded of elders. It's demanded that they be hospitable. It's taught in Romans, and we'll look at those in a few minutes. Romans talks about contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Russell talked about a couple weeks ago about what it meant and how we were supposed to be a part of it. But look at what the word means. Philoxenia. That's the Greek word. It's a compound word, and it comes from philo, like Philadelphia, to love like a brother, and xenos, stranger. So when you look at what it means, it is to love a stranger like he's your brother. Whoa, that's hard. That's hard. My physical brother's here. And I love my physical brother. And for me just to walk over this house, back over here, the fifth house on the left, just pick one randomly, and to go in to that person and say, I love you just like I love my brother. That's very difficult for me to say. How is it possible for us to develop that same type of love? How is this a feasible possibility? Why would God encourage us to love strangers like they are your brethren? Because He knows the strangers are on the outside. And if we want to include the strangers on the outside, those in the community, on the outer circle, if we want to bring those people from the outer circle into the crowd, into the committed, the congregation, to the committed, into the core, that the only way you're going to do that is if you express to them love. Love. Now, it's cliche. We've used it for years. You've said it. I've said it. People don't care how much you know about anything. People don't care how much you know. They want to know how much you care. And if people can see that desire for you to fit in, to be a part, we'll change. 1 Peter, look there with me real quick. As usual, I spend too much time on the beginning. 1 Peter chapter 4. Listen to what it says with hospitality here. Look at verse 7, 8, and 9. The end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be self-controlled, be sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. Above all, keep loving one another earnestly, or fervently, other Bibles say, since love covers a multitude of sins. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another, as good stewards of God's varied grace. Boy, we've talked about that word in depth the last few weeks, haven't we? Stewards Stewardship. How do you want to be a good steward of the things God's given you? One of the greatest things God's given us is His grace. How are we going to be a good steward of God's grace? Is when we show grace to others. And we show grace to others by showing hospitality, showing a love for the brethren, the love for the stranger, like we do love our brethren. And doing it with genuine love. When you do that, you're practicing Christian hospitality. Hebrews 13 verse 2 tells us to show hospitality because some have entertained, these strangers they've entertained, have entertained angels. Show hospitality to strangers because some have entertained angels unaware. And I think that's a direct reference to look back of Abraham in Genesis chapter 18. Abraham sees men walk into his tent. He runs and gets them and brings them, tells his wife to kill a fatted calf, to go get some meat. Let's cook a meal. They kill an animal, they dress it, they cook it. You realize how long that takes in that time of the world? No microwaves, no ovens. And make bread for them and have them sit down and eat. He has no idea who these people are. He doesn't know. You know what we would say? Well, they could be mass murderers. That's what we would say. Every stranger we come across, we're afraid they're a mass murderer. Now, I know there's the threat that's out there. And I'm not saying to be stupid. But I am saying that we are to still express love for those that are outside. Okay? Jesus explains this. I'm only going to touch this. Believe it or not, and I know you do believe it because you know me, this was the heart of the lesson right here. But look at Luke chapter 14. I just want to touch this just a little bit. In the parable that Jesus gives of the great banquet. And let's just look at the first two verses here. And then we'll close out with the invitation. He said also to a man who had invited him, when you give a dinner or a banquet, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your rich neighbors, lest they also invite you in return and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, you invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the just. Let's look at that. When you give a dinner or a banquet, do not, is what it says specifically in the ESV, do not invite your friends or your brothers. Now, brothers, if you look there, you'll have a footnote that says that refers to siblings, or your relatives, or the people that live next to you that are wealthy. Don't invite those people. Now, if we were to stop right there, is Jesus saying that when you have parties at your house, don't invite those you care about? Don't invite the closest people that you have. Don't invite your friends to your parties. Don't do that. Don't invite your family. Well, if he did that, then these holidays we celebrate, we'd be all up a creek, wouldn't it? That's not what Jesus is saying. Don't do that. His point of saying is, when you have these parties or banquets or have people over your house, or when you go out to eat with others, don't always just invite your friends. Listen carefully. Don't always just invite your family. Don't always invite those people that are closest to you. Because when you do that, what does he say happens? Because then they will repay you. And you know how they repay you? Is they will invite you and their closest friends to their house to eat. And then you will repay them by having those that are closest to you in your house. You'll invite them over. And you see what happens? It's the exact opposite of inclusion. Because you stay in your group. You stay in your group. And if you just stay in your group, somebody is left out. And a third to the half of the congregation feels here this morning that they're left out. Because you have not sought to get to know. That's deep stuff, church. Don't just invite your friends and your relatives and those people that you know will repay you of inviting you over there, because then the circle stays small. But you invite those. Look at what it says. You invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you. Then you will be repaid when the resurrection of the just happens. You bring in those people you wouldn't normally bring in. Now, please don't misunderstand me here and say this. Don't think, church, if you're a visitor here this morning, don't think that if you're invited to have dinner with somebody, that they look at you as a poor, mangled person. Don't think that. But I think what we need to be doing is we need to be looking at those people that may be poor spiritually, maybe mangled spiritually, maybe that need that support system here that they don't have, but you might be able to offer that to them. It's just inviting them out to eat. Just in sharing a meal together. Not necessarily having to open up your home, which I think is important, church. I think it's great if we can open up our home. And I'll be honest with you, I've been dreaming up this lesson here because we don't have that often here. Since January 1, when I heard from a friend of mine that said, you know, we've been at this church for a long time and we've invited people over. Nobody's ever invited us. Now, there are reasons, I know, and that's okay at times. But if that's the impression people feel, then there needs to be some concern on our part. When you go back to the levels of commitment, if we want to get people in, then that's the way we do it. We show them we care. This morning you look at your life and you find out where you are in relation to that level of commitment. And you look and see, are there things that you can do better? Absolutely. I think there's things we can all do better. We can do better. My wife and I included. This hits us just as well because we haven't had as many people over to our house and we haven't entertained as many people as we'd like to because we get so caught up in all these other things that our house isn't as clean or we're so busy and those types of things, same things that you say to yourself. Hospitality, the reason why Jesus talks about it so much and the reason why He encourages the elders to be that way and the reason why He encourages all to let that be genuine is He knows that that is the only way that people are going to look at you and they're going to say, that person over there, they care about me. And if they care about me, there's a reason why they care about me. I want to know what that reason is. And when they find out that reason's Jesus, the core gets bigger. So does the other levels. But we begin to grow. And we'll see our reward at the resurrection of the just. Think about your life this morning. If you need to respond, if you need the gospel, it's here. Christ is here. The blood is here. It's here for you to receive it, but you have to be willing to let your life receive it. Through faith, repentance, baptism, confession, those things. You need to do those things. If you haven't, today is the day. If you need to respond, get your priorities back in line, now's the time as we stand and sing the invitation song.